20-second lesson. The City of the Future.
With UK cities expanding at an alarming rate and gobbling up smaller towns and villages, much thought has been given to urban living and to the future shape of built-up environments. Key stakeholders are addressing issues such as sustainability, eco-conscious design, and energy efficiency, alongside more bread-and-butter matters such as crime and the safety, security, and well-being of city dwellers. But existing cities also have to compete with each other for ever-dwindling resources, be they financial, human, or intangible. Not all cities have the means to prosper, whether for geographical, historical, or financial reasons. Others have such economic or political clout that when they sneeze, the rest of Britain catches cold. Planners and city managers are forever on the lookout for ways to brand their product and to develop their unique selling proposition that will draw in businesses, talent, or even simply tourism. For example, a major retail or cultural facility or a historical monument can swiftly put a city on the map. Other places make their mark by being a transport hub or a gateway to other areas of the country. So cities with fewer jobs and less opportunity will have to come to terms with the fact that, in order to survive, they will have to pool their resources and forge links with neighbours, possibly merging with them. One way of laying the groundwork for the city of the future is to leverage trend-setting technologies. Tools such as e-government and innovative consumer-focused solutions are already commonplace, and a whole new breed of electronically delivered services are waiting in the wings. But a forward-looking approach to harnessing these innovations is needed if they are to live up to their promise. A case in point is the smart home, which interacts with its occupants and keeps them safe and well. We are all going to be able to live longer and healthier lives thanks to the awesome power of technology. However, as an eminent scientist said recently when presenting a paper at an international gathering of designers, "For the time being, my smart home feels remarkably thick. All the elements have to be pulled together if they are to work seamlessly. Sometimes the future seems a long way off."
Exercise. Translate.
Our university is attracting a continually increasing number of foreign students.
She's always on the lookout for ways to save money.
He writes plays, but teaching is his bread and butter.
The government is becoming ever more aware of its environmental responsibilities.
We need to leverage our resources to win market share.
– 23rd lesson. For or against?
Welcome to another edition of Vox Pop, the phone-in program that lets you, the listener, have your say on the key issues of the day. Today's topic is city life. Are you for it or against it? Would you rather be a townie or a countryman? Let's hear from our first caller, Wayne from Glasgow. Hi, Wayne. What's your take on this?
Thanks. Love the show. I've got to say that I just adore living in a big city. Not only do I get to meet all kinds of interesting people, I can also get around easily by public transport, eat out every night in a different place, and never get tired of exploring. Cities are cool.
All right, let's go to Trudy in Gloucestershire. What have you got to say to Wayne, Trudy?
Never have I heard such a dumb reason for living in a concrete jungle. I wouldn't be caught dead in a city. I live in a small village in a remote part of the country, and I still have a really busy social life. So busy am I that I never have time to get bored. But I'll bet that Wayne does, whatever he says.
Over to Rita in the exciting city of Bristol. You're on the air, Rita. Got any ideas on country life?
I most certainly have. I couldn't bear the silence. I've got to have noise, bustle and excitement. Never did I think I'd become a city girl. I was born on a farm in the wilds of Wales, you see. But try as I might, I could never settle down and enjoy it. I had a thing about cities. So when I was 15, I upped sticks and headed for the bright lights of Bristol.
Who are you trying to kid? What about the crime, poverty and urban decay?
Come off it. Surely you don't think that cities are dangerous places.
Hey, no arguing, guys. We've only got a few minutes left. Time for one last caller.
Hiya, it's Maggie from Glasgow. All I can say is that Wayne and I can't be living in the same city. Glasgow, safe? What with reckless drivers, gangs, even the muggers go around in pairs. The only way to be safe on the streets is to drive a tank. But that would only add to the pollution.
That's all we've got time for tonight. Thanks to all our callers. Tune in next week for another action-packed show.
Exercise. Translate.
Not only does she get to meet interesting people, she also gets paid.
Jimmy called in sick this morning.
Who's he trying to kid?
They live in the wilds of Gloucestershire, far from the noise and bustle of the city.
Any thoughts on this topic, Maggie?
I certainly have.
Sue can't take a plane. She's got a thing about heights.
'24th lesson. A brief history of urban development.
One tends to take it for granted that the bulk of the British population are city dwellers. Historically, however, this is a recent development, and many Britons still have close ties to the countryside. Only with the rise of manufacturing did people start flocking from rural to urban areas, in search of jobs, higher wages, in short, a better life. But many of them ended up doing back-breaking work in the dark, satanic mills of the industrial era.
Back in those dark days, living conditions were appalling, especially for the poor and needy. People were crowded together without proper shelter, basic amenities, or sanitation. Infectious diseases were rife and spread like wildfire through the teeming slums that blighted Britain's cities.
But gradually, as the general level of affluence increased, those cities became safer and cleaner, acting as magnets for migrants. The emphasis shifted gradually away from industry to services, defined famously as things you can't drop on your foot.
In the 20th century, and particularly during the post-war period, cities mushroomed and started to grow skywards. Skyscrapers reached unprecedented heights, and the cityscape was gradually transformed. Meanwhile, the process of urban sprawl, which was later to engulf most of the country, began to take root.
But as expansion ran out of control, people began to flee to the suburbs, leaving many inner-city areas derelict. We are now in a situation where the majority of the UK population lives in cities.
What of the future? It was industry and cheap energy that spurred urban growth. But what will happen now that fuel is getting dearer by the day? Will megalopolises like London simply collapse? Will we return to the rural communities whence we came? Some say we need not worry, because if man was ingenious enough to invent the city, he will surely be resourceful enough to ensure that it survives.
Yet, as the old saying goes, an optimist is simply someone who is ill-informed.
Exercise. Translate.
People tend to take basic amenities such as sanitation for granted.
It's a hard job, but I think we've broken the back of it.
You're smoking.
What of it?
She was sprawled in an armchair reading the paper when I came in.
Rumours of the president's death spread like wildfire.
_25th lesson. The tour guide.
Afternoon, ladies and gents. I'm Doug, and I'll be your guide for this afternoon's London tour. Our theme is More Than Meets the Eye, so be ready to find out a few of the best-kept secrets of this fascinating city. To coin a phrase, when a man is tired of London, he's tired of looking for a parking place. Coming up on your right is the Palace of Westminster, better known as the Houses of Parliament. It's made up of the Lords, for the posh people, and the Commons, for the likes of you and me. Did you know that the monarch isn't allowed to enter the House of Commons without permission? Mind you, why would she want to go there in the first place? You know what they say about politicians, don't you? They're like nappies. They need to be changed regularly, and for the same reasons. Now, that famous landmark over there is called Big Ben. Am I right? Wrong. It's actually St. Stephen's Tower. Big Ben's the name of the bell inside. It chimes about 150 times a day and never goes on strike. Now take a look over there on your left and you'll see Downing Street, home of the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I bet you didn't know that the front door to number 10, where the PM lives, opens from the inside only. You can't trust no one nowadays, can you? Try not to stare if you please, it's rude. We're now arriving at Trafalgar Square. There's old Nelson trying to catch a glimpse of his fleet. In the distance you can see Buckingham Palace, which was actually built on the site of a former house of ill repute, as the saying goes. If you keep your eyes peeled, you might just spot a real live royal. You never know your luck. If you'd care to glance over to your right, you can just about make out another famous monument, Charing Cross. London's always been a bit of a cosmopolitan place, to say the least. Charing Cross, the Elephant and Castle, Marylebone, Rotten Row in Hyde Park, all those names were originally French or Spanish. Later on, we'll take the tube over to the Tower of London and take a peek at the Crown Jewels. Keep a look out for the beefeaters and especially for the ravens that live in the tower. They say that if the birds flew away, the tower would collapse and the monarchy would fall. So no one's taking any chances. The poor things have had their wings clipped just in case they're Republicans.
Exercise. Translate.
Being a tour guide is a difficult job. Mind you, it's well paid.
We asked him for help, but he just stared blankly.
Investors had a rude awakening when the bank announced its results.
He works as a stockbroker in the city, and he's coining it.
I glanced behind me and realised that I was being followed.
_26th lesson. Our ancestors?
One of the major problems facing our modern cities is the congestion and pollution caused by what one great English politician once called the infernal combustion engine. But don't go thinking that the problem is recent. Alas, it was ever thus. An anthropologist studying an ancient American people discovered that they had a strange ritual. They worshipped an animal called the rack, a peculiar and dangerous creature that was a vital part of their everyday life.
This highly advanced society devoted an inordinate amount of time to the feeding and care of the rack, a large beast not unlike a fully grown bull in size, strength and temperament, but less intelligent. Although the rack could be used for practical purposes, it was chiefly a status symbol. Most families owned at least one rack, spending vast sums of money on its upkeep, while some better-off members of the tribe kept whole herds in order to show off to their neighbours. Sadly, the rack was not a sturdy animal. Its average lifespan was just 10 years or so. It had to be fed frequently, and it often fell ill and had to be taken to a specialised and highly expensive medicine man. Furthermore, the rack had some unusual habits that other advanced cultures would have considered harmful. For one thing, they bred very quickly, and no real efforts were ever made to curb this problem. As a result, more and more special paths had to be built so that the racks could travel along them, for they would race against each other at high speed, requiring that special areas be set aside just for them. So high was the cost of building the facilities that a special levy had to be paid annually to the community. Unlike cows and other beasts of burden, the excrement of the rack could not be used as a fertilizer or fuel. Worst of all, they would often run amok, killing any members of the tribe who happened to be nearby. Though we have no proof, the rack could well have been responsible for the disappearance of the entire society.
Far-fetched as this may sound, just try reading the word rack backwards.
Exercise. Translate.
Don't go thinking that this is a new trend. It has always been this way.
The damage had to be seen to be believed.
For one thing, she was a great writer. For another, she was also a brilliant economist.
You'll only throw fuel on the flames if you answer his email.
Although his excuse may sound far-fetched, it's absolutely true. Twenty-seventh lesson. Getting away from the city.
I love the city, I honestly do, but I also need to get out of it every now and then. Fancy a day trip on Saturday?
I really ought to work this weekend. I've got a lot on my plate at the office and I'm already way behind. It'd probably do me good, though. A change is as good as a rest, as they say. Where shall we go?
What about Hampton Court? There's a fabulous maze, and we can picnic in Bushy Park afterwards if it's fine.
You and your picnics. Give me a decent pub or a restaurant any day. Any better ideas?
How about Oxford? It's only a couple of hours away by car and there's loads to see and do. The dreaming spires and whatnot. I do believe they might even have an upmarket eatery or two. I haven't been there for donkey's years. How about it?
You want to drive? You're out of your mind. We'll be stuck in a tailback on the A40 for hours.
You're such a wet blanket. Why don't you come up with a better idea then? Why not stay closer to home? Greenwich is easy to get to by boat, and we can take the train back. It's really quaint. We can potter around the second-hand bookshops, go to the flea market.
No way. I have no intention of spending the day with a shopaholic. Anyway, the place will be crawling with tourists.
You needn't be so rude. I daren't open my mouth. Every time I do, you jump down my throat. Can't you see that I'm racking my brains to find something that will suit us both?
I dare say you are, but we're getting nowhere fast. I suggest we ask Dave if he has any bright ideas. Hey, Dave, what do you reckon? Should we go to Hampton Court, Greenwich, or what?
If you want my honest opinion, guys, you'd be much better off going to the movies. Then I'd call the local takeaway, order a curry, and get them to deliver it. Then just come home and hang out. Bob's your uncle. The perfect weekend.
Now, there's a man after my own heart.
Exercise. Translate.
Plug in the machine, press the switch, and Bob's your uncle.
Now that he's retired, he just potters around the house.
The government refused to fund the project, so the bank came up with the money.
He said he would rather act in films than direct them any day.
I'm afraid I'm behind with my repayments.
'28th lesson.
Big cities attract millions of people and engulf the countryside around them.
It's hard to escape from a city. City dwellers often finish by travelling for 3 hours a day just to reach work.
And when the smog is bad, they can't even identify the buildings around them.
Scientists and city managers try to find ideas to improve urban life.
The best idea, they say, is to build cities in the country. '29th lesson. Look how far we've come.
Here are two pieces about food and cookery in Britain, one written in the 1860s and the other last year.
It has been asserted that English cookery is, nationally speaking, far from being the best in the world. More than this, we have frequently been told by brilliant foreign writers, half philosophers, half chefs, that we are the worst cooks on the face of the earth, and that the proverb which alludes to the divine origins of food and the precisely opposite origin of its preparers is peculiarly applicable to us islanders. Man, it has been said, is a dining animal. Creatures of the inferior races eat and drink. Only man dines. The rank which a people occupy in the grand scale may be measured by their way of taking their meals, as well as by their way of treating their women. The nation which knows how to dine has learned the leading lesson of progress. It implies both the will and the skill to reduce to order and surround with idealisms and graces the more material conditions of human existence. And wherever that will and skill exist, life cannot be wholly ignoble.
Forgive the pun, but we English have had a chip on our shoulder about our food for far too long. People used to say, "I cook for fun, but for food, I go out to a restaurant." It's time to celebrate the rekindling of our interest in our culinary identity. The big problem with our national dishes is not what they are, it's what they're called. Let's face it, who in their right mind would want to eat something called black pudding or spotted dick? Does your mouth water at the thought of toad in the hole or bubble and squeak? Because of this inferiority complex, we tend to make a big palaver about a subject that's really straightforward. Cooking great ingredients simply and well, and not bothering about keeping up with the Joneses. So, if it's bangers and mash that rings your bell, then go for it. But if you want to nuke a ready meal, that's fine too. Just remember, follow your gut instinct, literally, and cook whatever makes you feel good.
Exercise. Translate.
Does money really matter in the scheme of things?
Podcasting the meeting. Now there's a thought.
Nobody in their right mind would upgrade to the new operating system right now.
Her name definitely rings a bell, but I can't place it.
The emergency plan is being implemented on a national scale.
Thirtieth lesson. Have you heard the one about...
Evening. I'm right proud to be here at the world-famous comedy store. Tonight, I want to talk about a really depressing subject. No, not the government. Diets. Actually, I don't need to shed any pounds. No, seriously, folks. My doctor said my weight was just fine for a man who's 18 foot tall. Anyway, so I agree to go on a diet, but to play my own rules, if you get my meaning. First, if no one sees you eating something, it has no calories, right? Second, foods eaten for medical purposes are okay. That includes chips and lager. Third, if you eat from someone else's plate, you don't consume any calories. They do. My wife told me the best way to get rid of half a stone of ugly fat was to cut my head off. But she was just pulling my leg. Wasn't she? Of course she was. In the end, though, I found that I could slim by avoiding the 4 main food groups. You all know what they are, don't you? Fast, frozen, instant, and chocolate. In fact, the reason I got this comfortably plump is that my wife's a rotten cook. Whatever she makes, the gravy's black, and I have to use the smoke alarm as an oven timer. For 10 years, she served me nothing but leftovers. I never found the original meal. So I became a junk food junkie, not because I wanted to, but because I had to, and because it was cheap. I used to stand in line and read the sign, no notes larger than £10 accepted. And I'm like, if I had 10 quid, I wouldn't be eating here, would I? You dimwit. Then I discovered ethnic foods. Some people curry favour, but I favour curry. Here's a thought for you. Give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach him how to fish and he'll lounge around in a boat all week and drink beer. Thank you and good night. You've been a wonderful audience.
Exercise. Translate.
New research has shed light on eating disorders.
Even if you don't believe the story, they do.
Stop pulling my leg and tell me the truth.
I mustn't be late for dinner, or there'll be nothing left over.
He tried to curry favour with voters by promising tax cuts.
31st lesson. The Celebrity Chef. From Epicure magazine.
James Rhodes, a leading light in the hospitality industry, has been hailed as the most exciting chef of his generation. He is the man who is credited with putting British cooking back on the map almost single-handedly. Jimmy was brought up in Worcester, surrounded by people with a love of good food and drink. He fell into the catering profession by accident, after waiting tables to pay his way through university. He trained under several well-known chefs, working his way up the ranks to become sous chef, coincidentally, at the Worcestershire Hotel.
His big break came when he was asked to take over the reins at Cannon's, then London's top fine dining venue. It was there that he developed his trademark style and several of the signature dishes that have made him famous. He is now the executive chef at 2 top-notch restaurants and a food consultant to several airlines. Epicure caught up with him between 2 services at his latest venture, Jimmy on the Strand.
How did you get into this business in the first place, Jimmy?
Pure fluke, really. I was basically a meat and two veg man until I got to know Rick David, who took me on as a pot washer. He was a self-taught chef and a brilliant teacher, but a tough taskmaster and a hard man to get on with. One time, I was sitting in the back of the kitchen on my day off, sipping a nice cuppa, when a huge crash followed by a tinkling of broken glass announced David's arrival. He'd thrown an empty tray straight through a window. His eyes were popping out of his head, and a few wisps of grey hair were peeping out from under his toque.
Why the hell has no one peeled the spuds?
He yelled at me.
And why aren't the stoves on?
Then he grabbed a carving knife and hurled it across the kitchen, but it clattered harmlessly to the ground. I darted from behind the counter and headed quickly for the exit. The door inched open, and one of the cleaners sidled into the kitchen. He gaped at the scene, and then his mouth twitched into a smile. "But, Chef, today's Sunday, and we're closed today," he chuckled. Like I say, brilliant, but a bit of a nutter.
Exercise. Translate.
She's credited with putting British cooking back on the map all by herself.
My dad worked his way up through the ranks to become an officer.
Steve was born in Worcester and, by pure fluke, ended up working at the Worcestershire Hotel.
I waited tables to pay my way through university.
He got his big break when he was asked to compose the music for John Ford's first film. "30-second lesson. A side order of sarcasm.
The High Court left a bad taste in the mouth of one food critic last month by finding him guilty of libel. Jay Craddock had written a damning review of a local eating place, so the owner sued him for loss of earnings. Should a reviewer be free to say what he or she pleases? Or should there be limits so that they don't go too far? Imagine you were on the jury. Read Craddock's article and decide for yourself.
The restaurant, which goes by the unbearably twee name of Sir Loins, prides itself on serving the traditional cookery of England. If you eat there, and I can't think why you would, you will understand why our nation's favourite dish is chicken tikka masala. It's not that the food is bad. It's truly, ridiculously, mind-bogglingly, gut-churningly awful. And, as a famous humorist might have added, the portions are so small. The room has been decorated in mock Tudor by someone with a serious good taste bypass. But while the decor was off-putting, we had not the faintest inkling of what was in store. I kicked off with brown Windsor soup, made to a time-honoured secret recipe, and my partner plumped for prawn cocktail. My soup turned out to be a bowl of lukewarm dishwater, clearly the secret in question, while the cocktail had only a nodding acquaintance with the crustacean family. Having barely survived the starters, we braced ourselves for the mains. Our waiter, a graduate of rude service catering school, plonked the plates on the table and stamped off. I had ordered the trad special, faggots and mushy peas, which was as awful as it sounds. It was not even up to school dinner standard, while my partner's classic shepherd's pie, which is such a tasty dish when cooked properly, made her feel sorry for the poor shepherd. For pudding, we had the aptly named gooseberry fool and a so-so sherry trifle. The bill, with a bottle of the house wine and a cheeky discretionary service charge, was slightly less than the down payment on a new sports car. Or a bulldozer. The only vehicle which I would ever dream of returning to Sir Loins in.
So, guilty or not guilty?
Exercise. Translate.
The sales manager kicked off with a 20-minute slide presentation.
What's in store for us next week?
I haven't the faintest inkling.
The food was so-so, but it was the decor that really put me off.
Poverty is not just a side issue. It's vitally important.
We don't really know one another. We're just on nodding terms.
Thirty-third lesson. Don't over-egg the pudding.
So common are food-related idioms in English that an inexperienced writer can give the reader indigestion. Many journalists think it is as easy as pie to use food-related idioms indiscriminately, but they end up eating humble pie when their editor gives them a dressing down.
Take the cautionary tale of a government official humiliated by a corruption scandal, who finally confessed everything in an autobiography that made him rich and famous.
Health Minister Peter Hay was a bad apple, living on the gravy train and keeping a finger in many pies. With a huge salary and an expense account, he didn't have to bring home the bacon. His wife, who was a big cheese in the Foreign Office, egged him on to sort away more and more money. Even though she was as nutty as a fruitcake, she was the apple of his eye, so he did not dare say no. They were like chalk and cheese, but she had him eating out of her hand. She looked like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, but she was a tough cookie. Smelling something fishy, a reporter started sniffing around, but could not find anything. Finally, everything went pear-shaped when a junior clerk spilled the beans to the media. Hay jumped out of the frying pan into the fire and ended up with egg on his face. He should have kept as cool as a cucumber, but he had a half-baked idea that the storm would blow over. For a while he hit the sauce, but eventually realised that there was no use crying over spilt milk. The Prime Minister urged him to keep his mouth shut, but Hay upset the apple cart. He published a frank and revealing memoir, which sold like hotcakes and made him a fortune. So in the end, he had his cake and ate it, with icing on.
Our advice to budding writers is not to put all their eggs in one basket, or all their expressions in one article. In a nutshell, don't over-egg the pudding.
Exercise. Translate.
Even though they're brother and sister, they're as different as chalk and cheese.
He was the apple of her eye.
Yes, a bad apple.
Jim's got the new supervisor eating out of the palm of his hand.
When the bank refused to give us a loan, everything went pear-shaped.
Don't panic. I'm sure the storm will eventually blow over.
34th lesson. Cooking or cuisine?
I just met Tom, and I gather he's coming round for dinner tomorrow night. Is that right?
Yes, I said I'd invite him one day, so I did. What's wrong with that?
He's such a bore. Listening to his stories is like watching paint dry, only not so much fun.
I grant you he's not the world's greatest conversationalist, but he's a nice enough guy. Anyway, what's done is done. Now I've got to think up a menu.
Also, he's a damn food snob. Everything has to be line-caught, pan-fried and drizzled with olive oil. I can just hear him now. That chocolate cake is to die for. Your apple crumble is so Moorish. Can't stand that kind of talk. It's one of my pet peeves.
Don't be so crabby. He's coming for dinner, and that's that.
In that case, I'll give you the bill of fare. Let's start with something wholesome, shall we? A hearty winter soup, followed by oven-baked sea bass with sun-ripened vegetables. For dessert, we'll have toothsome organic ice cream made with free-range eggs. And to top it off, cellar-ripened cheese and bakery-fresh bread. For crying out loud, why can't we just have food rather than cuisine?
OK, I give up. You win. I'll just make baked beans on toast followed by jelly and custard.
I'm serious. You can't beat plain, unfussy food like beef or pork, none of your fancy sauces, and a bottle of plonk.
You have a point, I must admit. But I'd really like to serve something special.
How about herb-infused loin of grass-reared Angus with a savoury Jew and crispy northern waffle?
What's that, for heaven's sake?
Roast beef, gravy and Yorkshire pudding. It's just so Moorish. Exercise. Translate.
They're coming round for dinner tonight, and that's that.
I gather from your CV that you have experience in marketing.
She knows I would die for one of those new smartphones.
Complex decisions are standard fare at senior management level.
I get your point. I admit I hadn't thought of that aspect.